Alright, we're going to look at cell division for the second part of our video for Unit 7. Cells need to divide for a couple of reasons. If you happen to be a single-celled organism, your primary reason to divide is for reproduction, and that type of reproduction is called asexual reproduction because we divide from one parent cell to create two. It's a single cell creating two daughter cells or two offspring. So that type of division in single-celled organisms like prokaryotes, bacteria, is called binary fission. So remember, B for binary, B for bacteria, that's the type of cell division that we're going to see. Why do our cells divide? Well, for multicellular organisms, ours are going to divide for new growth and replacement of cells. So say you got cut, you need to replace this damaged tissue, they need to grow back. Or if you're a baby and you're going to develop into an adult, we need to add cells to that so you can grow bigger. That type of reproduction in our cells is called mitosis. And mitosis is making identical cells. We want identical cells because we don't want our skin to grow liver cells. You know, we cut our finger, I don't need a heart to grow there. I want skin cells to grow there. I want to replace the cells that were originally there. And that's another form of asexual reproduction because we're using a single cell to create two exact identical daughter cells. So we should get new skin growth and we should get our additional cells so that we can continue to grow and develop. There's a lot of challenges to division of cells because each new cell should be an exact copy of the original cell. And to do that, we need to make a copy of our DNA. And DNA are rather large molecules with tons of information. And so taking care of the DNA, making sure we can get complete copies into the two new cells is one of the most crucial parts of cell division. So this whole process that your cell goes through, just being a cell, dividing, making new cells, is called a cell cycle. It's basically the life of the cell. This is what your cell is going to do. And the cool thing for cells is they know exactly the steps or processes they have to take in their life cycle. Where us as a whole organism, we never know what we're going to do day to day. They've got actual directions for them, so they know what they can do and what they can't do. So when a cell is going through most of its cell cycle, it's just going to look like a cell chilling. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of activity going on, but really there's tons of work and lots of things occurring inside our cells. So the main phase of the cell cycle is interphase. Inter means between, so interphase is between cell divisions. And 90% of your cell cycle is occurring in interphase. It's the biggest part, and there's so much going on. We've actually break it down into three separate mini steps or mini phases that inside interphase. The first thing that's going to take place inside the cell cycle is cell growth. That's G1. Your cell is going to grow. It's going to make proteins. It's going to duplicate all of its organelles. It's going to make sure that it has enough nutrients to make sure that it has the resources it needs so that when it does decide to go through cell division, it can do so successfully. The second step it's going to do is it's going to turn its attention to the DNA inside the nucleus. It's going to copy the DNA, and that's the S phase. S actually stands for synthesis. Remember, synthesis means to make. So we're going to replicate our DNA so that when we do divide, each new cell gets all of the genetic information, an exact copy of the original, an exact copy to each other inside it so that it can have the instructions so that it can continue to be the cell that it's supposed to be. After that comes G2, and G2 is going to double check all of the work done during the S phase. I always think of it being as good to go. So if it passes the G2 phase and it's decided that, hey, we can divide now, it's going to enter into the M phase, which stands for mitosis. And as we said, mitosis is the actual part where we're going to make that exact copy of our cells. The whole focus of mitosis is on the nucleus, managing that DNA, getting those copies of DNA sorted into two new developing cells so that those cells can have the information they need to be successful. The last part is cytokinesis, or the C phase, where we are actually going to physically separate the cell into two new cells. So cyto means cell, kinesis needs movement, and so we are separating the cytoplasm. We're pulling the cell apart into two new cells. So this is the overall view of the cell cycle. You can see we will start here with G1. The cell is just being a cell, copying everything but except the DNA. And then when we pass that part, we go into the S phase where now our focus is going to be on the DNA. So here you can see I have a single strand of the chromosome. Here is the double strands of the chromosome forming the chromosome with the centromere holding it together. Once we get the replication process complete, the cell is going to double check and make sure, hey, I didn't make any mistakes in replication. Everything's ready for us to move on to the next part. So G1, S, and G2 make up interphase. Once we hit here, we're going to flow through and go to mitosis. And we're going to divide out that DNA. And then when we finish and complete that, we will divide the cell itself through cytokinesis. We're going to look here at GO in the next slide. GO is where some cells actually leave the cell cycle. They're done dividing. They don't want to divide anymore. And so we call that the GO phase. They're not going to replicate their DNA. They're not going to make copies of themselves. They're finished. And examples of those would be your neurons. So that's why if you sustain a brain injury or a spinal cord injury, those cells won't grow back. They're not going to repair themselves because they're in this GO phase. They're not going to bounce back for any sort of injury that may occur to them. So that's it for cell division. And from there on, we will look at mitosis separately.